Good morning, everyone. We'll get started. We're a couple of minutes behind, but we'll make up for that. I now call this meeting to order. Welcome to meeting number 9 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Fisheries and Oceans. Pursuant to a Standing Order 1082 and a motion adopted on January 18, 2022, the committee is resuming its study of the traceability of fish and seafood products. This meeting is taking place in a hybrid format pursuant to the House Order of November 25, 2021. Interpretation services are available for this meeting. Please inform me immediately if interpretation is lost, and we'll ensure it is restored before resuming. I have a couple of housekeeping matters before we begin hearing witnesses. Members have received study budgets by email. One for this study and another for the study on flood control and mitigation systems in British Columbia. I would like to know whether there are any objections to adopting these budgets today before moving forward. In some circles. All right, seeing no objections, we'll say passed and unanimous, or just needs to be consent, okay. And secondly, as you know, we will begin the study of marine cargo container spills at the end of March. Could we agree to a deadline for submitting witness lists to the clerk by Friday, March 4th at 5 p.m.? Everybody okay with that? Okay, don't forget. Thank you. I now, of course, would like to welcome our witnesses for the first panel today. We have Ms. Claire Canet from, I'm not even going to try and pronounce the group,
RPSG.
RPSG. I'll go with that. All right, perfect. Thank you. And the second group from Metro Incorporated, Alexandra Leclerc, manager responsible for procurement. Now, she will be accompanied by legal counsel, Ms. Marie-Eve Goulet. Witnesses appearing before committee may be assisted by counsel, but they must seek the committee's permission in order to be there and hear what's going on. Please be advised that counsel will be restricted to an advisory role and may neither ask questions nor reply on the witnesses on their behalf. Is the committee in agreement to let Ms. Goulet stay on the Zoom? Okay, hearing no dissent, that's all agreed. So now we'll proceed with opening remarks. Ms. Canet, for 5 minutes or less, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. So I'm Claire Canet, chef de projet du...
I am Claire Canet, project manager at the Group of Professional Fishermen of the South of the Gaspésie since 2017. We can call it the RPPSG. I am in charge of projects related to the traceability of Gaspésian lobster and the tools and new technologies that are the cornerstone of any seafood traceability system, such as the Jobel electronic logbook for catch reporting. I have also been working for 2 years on electronic data governance issues in fisheries. The RPPSG is currently the only fishermen's organization in Quebec to have implemented and maintained, with the help of MAPAC, a lobster identification system. Since 2012, a Gaspésian lobster identification medallion indicating which fisherman caught it is placed on the claw for 100% of lobsters caught in our region in the spring. This fishery is MSC certified thanks to the efforts of the RPPSG. The medallion is a simple and effective way for the consumer to identify the origin of the lobster. Some supermarket chains, and I would like to highlight that I am not referring to Metro, and Metro is a great partner, in fact. So some supermarket chains are not very concerned about the origin of the product and will sell Gaspésian lobster when no animal in the tank is wearing a medallion or when the elastic bands on the claws have been replaced by the distributor. Several fishmongers of large surface stores have told us over the years that they could receive whole boxes of live lobster supposedly from the Gaspésie without any of them having the tag. There is therefore an issue as to the role and involvement of distributors to allow the traceability of our seafood. The most blatant example dates back to 2017 when Costco sold lobster from the Magdalen Islands with a big promotion when the fishery wasn't even open. On the other hand, if the lobster is cooked by a processor, the tag is removed. During processing, the batches of lobsters of several origins, including of American origin, are mixed. Therefore, there is no guarantee for the final consumer that the label on the processed lobster indicates the correct origin of the product unless the processor has set up a logistics system based on the origin of the batches within the plant. However, new technologies allow the implementation of traceability systems and a better management of batches, whether it be by the fisher, the processor, or the distributor. For example, the Global Electronic Logbook for the declaration of catches by fishermen based on technical standards issued by DFO contains the fundamental data for any traceability system, including the date of landing, the origin, whether the fishing is legal, the fishermen, and the quantities landed. However, in order for this data to be integrated with the traceability data, systems that can communicate and exchange with each other must be put in place. This problem will be found for all systems used in the value chain. It is thus necessary that any system of traceability answers a specific technical schedule of conditions and common to the whole of the actors of the chain, and that we advance beforehand towards a harmonization of the systems. The communication of certain data from the fishermen to other actors in the value chain raises several substantive issues. It is about data that touches the very heart of the commercial activity of a fisherman who is the only one authorized to exploit the public fishing resource, and that, like any data of a private company, must be protected and are confidential. The seafood catching sector is increasingly attracting the interest of companies, and controlling what is coming in is essential. The principle of independence of commercial fishers is a fundamental principle enshrined in fisheries laws and regulations. It is therefore necessary that protection, confidentiality, and modalities of use of fishing data be at the heart of any traceability system, and that independent fishers be central actors in the conceptualization and development of such a system. On the other hand, fisheries resources are a public resource that generate revenues of billions of dollars for coastal communities and provinces. Thousands of Canadian businesses of all sizes depend on this resource, and marine products are necessary to ensure Canada's food independence. For all these reasons, it seems to me necessary that any seafood traceability system be set up and governed by provincial public authorities rather than by private companies that might be tempted to exploit the metadata of the entire value chain for private commercial purposes. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you for that. We'll now go to Madame the Clerk for 5 minutes or less, please.
Hi, everyone. First, thank you for inviting me to speak in front of this committee. It is a pleasure to virtually be here. Donc, bonjour à tous.
Hello, everyone. My name is Alexandra Leclerc. I'm a procurement manager at Metro. For those of you who don't know Metro, it's a Canadian retailer with a turnover of more than 18 billion, with operations in the food and pharmacy sectors, mainly in Quebec and Ontario. You may be familiar with some of our banners: Metro, Super C and Food Basics, Jean Coutu, Brunet, and more. At Metro, the issue of traceability of fish and seafood is not new. It is part of a global approach to corporate responsibility, which started in 2010, when the company adopted a sustainable fishing and aquaculture policy. The policy covers our entire seafood offering, whether fresh, frozen, canned, processed, or not. It is based on 5 main supply principles: 1, healthy species; 2, responsible harvesting methods; 3, traceability; 4, respect for workers; and 5, socioeconomic development. In all honesty, although the 5 principles are important, I would say that traceability is really the central pillar of our policy. In fact, it is a prerequisite for all of our suppliers. In other words, Metro requires that its suppliers systematically give us full traceability for all the products that they offer us, even before we proceed with a listing or an order. The traceability is used to assess the products, and that information is used to do what I call a background check, which is a review of the literature and scientific data to ensure that the product meets our sustainability criteria for healthy species and responsible harvesting methods. By complete traceability, we mean 5 things. First, the scientific name of the species, the Latin name, which is unique to each. It ensures that we speak the exact same language as our suppliers. This is a challenge since not all players in the industry are familiar or comfortable with scientific nomenclature. On the other hand, using the common names represents a significant risk because in some cases they are vague, general, and can refer to different species. Secondly, the geographical origin, the place of fishing or farming. This is also a challenge since it is often confused with country of origin, which is defined by Canadian legislation as the place of last major processing. These two elements are not always identical. In fact, they rarely are. So when there is confusion between the two, it makes sustainability assessments all the more difficult, considering the geographic origin is necessary to make an adequate assessment of the status of the stock, the health of the species. And finally, the last 3 elements of traceability are the type of capture, either wild or farmed, for the method of harvesting, and 5, certification or sustainability. Once the product is approved, the traceability information is stored in a database that is updated monthly. This allows us to ensure that what they said is still true. We also randomly test our suppliers for their ability to document their supply chain to the fishing vessel or to the farming site. And we also have a DNA testing program to verify the species declared by our suppliers. All of this allows our traceability program to evaluate the sustainability of products and to ensure a responsible product offering. And this allows us to have transparent and complete labeling as well. It is a priority and even a pride for Metro to offer this complete traceability because it allows the consumer to make their own decisions based on their personal knowledge and values. It is perceived as a proof of transparency and a pledge of trust. With that, I will conclude my presentation, and I will be pleased to elaborate and answer your questions. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for that. It's not often that a witness will leave a little bit of time on the clock, but we do appreciate it. We'll now proceed to our rounds of questioning. Before I start, I want to welcome Monsieur Garand in place of Madame Debienne for some time today. Welcome to committee. We'll now go to Mr. Perkins for 6 minutes or less, and I will remind members of the committee to direct or identify who you're asking your question to. It makes it a little easier instead of having our witnesses stare at the camera and not know who's supposed to answer. So if you could start, Mr. Perkins, when you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, witnesses, for coming to this important study. We're learning a lot, I think, as a committee on the process so far, and a few surprises. I'm impressed by your presentation, Ms. Leclerc, particularly the 5 areas that you covered, that you look at. So in those 5 areas, you keep track of that for every product, but it isn't necessarily reflected on the packaging. Is that correct?
En fait, nos emballages.
So we will show the traceability in over 90-95% of products. There are certain situations that make it impossible to add traceability. For example, technical limitations on certain products. So sometimes it's for printing. We have the ingredients list that we have to have on the label, and sometimes it's hard to add the traceability because there's not enough space. There are certain situations as well where there are multiple types of a same product, and if providers have different sourcing areas, then it can be difficult. For example, if there's a product from Canada and the United States, we can write North America, but if it's the United States and China, it's more difficult. But often the traceability is found on most of our products, whether it be from our brand or when they are wrapped in plastic.
Thank you. So your process is, I think, clearly superior that I've seen to some of the packaging and some of the traceability that I've seen with your competitors. I went through some of those in an earlier committee meeting. I did check some of the packages last night, so it's not a scientific sample when I was in your store last night here in Ottawa, one of the stores. And so, for example, there was a Highliner product called Wild Caught Pacific Salmon, and in the ingredients it lists it as smoked steelhead salmon. There's a discussion about whether you classify steelhead as a Pacific salmon. It usually isn't in the ingredients. And on the front of it, it says no artificial products, but if it's smoked, or no preservatives, if it's smoked, it's got preservatives in it. So I'm just wondering, like, I don't mean to pick that one out just in particular. There are a few others, like there was a package on a True North Atlantic salmon package that was not labeled as farmed salmon, which it naturally would be. So just wondering if you could describe in your process how that comes. You may trace that all the way through, and it's great that you do DNA sampling, but as a consumer, when it says naturally smoked Atlantic salmon, product of Canada, why it doesn't say farmed, or why, in some of the cases, how you come up with classifying steelhead as Pacific salmon.
Donc, je ferai ici la distinction.
Here, I would make a distinction between national brand products. You mentioned Highliner, True North, and another example. Those providers are what we call a national brand, and they're responsible for their packaging. Metro recommends something, but they make the decision themselves. Metro offers traceability on products that they have control over, or their own private brand. The Irrésistible brand, for example, or other brands that belong to us. For the example that you mentioned, not saying that it's farmed or not is caused by Canadian legislation. Currently, traceability is on a voluntary basis in Canada. What you need to have on the product is the common name and the country of origin, which is the last place where the product was processed. For the other information, companies are not legally obligated to share. I hope that responds to your question.
I appreciate that. I think that's one of the areas we're looking at that we may, depends where we go with the report, about a little more consumer clarity on some of the packaging and labeling. For Madame Canet, if I'm pronouncing it correctly.
Canet, yes,
Canet,
you do.
You mentioned in your statement that you found issues of Costco selling lobster in out-of-season periods, promoting it as local lobster. Could you expand on that a little more?
Yeah, that was, so obviously I'm not working for the Magdalen Island lobster fishermen, but in 2017, Costco went on to do a big promotion about 2 weeks before in the Magdalen Islands lobster fishery opened, and they were selling with big on-site in their shops with big banners, Magdalen Island lobster, etc., which clearly could not be possible given the boats had not gone out yet, and they would go out in 2 weeks' time. So really, it does raise the issue of, and that was pointed out also by Mrs. Leclerc, which is the issue of how some distributors or providers do inform the end consumer In all honesty, it is extremely puzzling how we can end up with situations like that, although even if the legislation is not perfect to protect the end consumer, I think that here it is raising the question of credibility and control of some suppliers or distribution chains in the seafood industry. So the Magdalen Islands fishermen did lodge a complaint against Costco to that effect.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Perkins. Your time is up. We'll now go to Mr. Cormier for 6 minutes or less, please.
Merci, Monsieur le Président, et merci.
Thank you, and thank you to the witnesses. Just to continue on what my colleague was asking as a question to Ms. Canet. With regards to Costco, just to carry on with that idea, do you know whether or not there is legislation that stops that from happening in bulk stores like Costco? Like Costco saying that there was lobster from the Magdalen Islands, whereas we don't know where the lobster was coming from? Is there any legislation that prevents that? You said that fishers had complained. What does your research show on that topic? Answer. As was previously stated, the current legislation does not guarantee the veracity of labeling. It is extremely complicated. It's difficult to follow what's happening in the chain. So when there's a situation like Costco, it's very difficult for the producer or the end consumer to move forward with a complaint. For example, every year we look at the consumers of Gaspésian lobster and we receive many calls. And I heard from a consumer who was able to identify Gaspésian lobster, and he communicated with us. And there was an issue with the lobster. And it's important because in this case, it is the quality of the lobster that is at issue, and we try to examine the chain to see where the problem was coming from. So we went to the distributor, we asked questions, we did not receive an answer with regards to whether or not they were able to say when that batch had arrived, what are the conditions that the lobster is stored in, where was this lobster purchased, what was the trajectory for that lobster. It was impossible to find. And of course, the consumer doesn't know what to do because they're facing a machine and they can't get any answers. Thank you for elaborating on Mr. Perkins' question, which I found very relevant. And regarding traceability of your products, the tag that can be scanned and see where the lobster is from, and we see videos of fishers. I think that it's advantageous for you to promote lobster from your region. But earlier you said, and we're not talking about Metro here, but you said that there are other chains that remove the tag at their supermarkets. Why would they do that quickly? Answer. So those elastics are removed or changed depending on the fishmonger. And those elastics, those tags, have the information on the distributor for that supermarket. So they're responsible for the dispatching logistics of the batches in the different stores. So it is at the distributor level where things are changed. And it's both elastics that are changed. If it's because a tag fell, well, then they would remove one elastic. But these are not isolated cases. And to have a batch with the elastics removed is a problem from the distributor. Thank you. Now for Ms. Leclerc, you said that your supermarkets have 5 principles so that the products that are found on your shelves are beneficial to consumers, if we can say it that way. Can you give us examples of products that you removed from shelves or suppliers that you stopped working with because they didn't respect your measures? As my colleague was saying, you might see shrimp, Atlantic shrimp, but in fact they come from elsewhere and they're farmed. Can you give us examples of suppliers that you had to let go? And what kind of rules were they not respecting? Answer. I could talk about, firstly, species that we do not sell. Metro does a follow-up of vulnerable species, and we have a list of species that are temporarily removed. So we automatically refuse any offers from suppliers. This is a public list on our website, but certain types of tuna, for example, and annually we assess the situation. And I've been working in that field for 4 years, and it happened once where the stock had gotten better, and we had reauthorized the sale for that species. And with regards to a supplier, I don't have a specific example because we examine the product and the species. So for a supplier, we could refuse certain products because traceability is not complete, but we could accept other products if they were able to show the traceability. And where do you do that assessment?
Gone over. Somebody will get it in the next round of questioning. We'll now go to Monsieur Grand for 6 minutes, s'il vous plaît.
Merci beaucoup et d'abord.
Thank you very much. And I would like to start by thanking our witnesses for being here today. I quite like seafood, especially seafood from Quebec, and you will not be surprised by that. And to see that the importance that you put on traceability is very reassuring. I would like to start with Ms. Canet. I was interested to see that you work so closely with MAPAC and with Quebec. You said that Quebec plays an important role and that provinces could play an important role in traceability and improving the traceability system. I would like to have more information on that. What is the federal government's role and what should be the province's role in that process? Answer. If I understood correctly, provinces are responsible for the processing and commercialization because that's a part of their jurisdiction. Traceability has an impact on commercialization, so it's essential that provinces be a part of the creation of a traceability system. with regards to the role of the federal government, because there is interprovincial trade, there would need to be a harmonization of systems to ensure a complete traceability of Canadian products. So the federal government would have a role to play in developing a strategy where they could implement the framework for protecting data and consumers and the regulation of value chain players. It would also allow a harmonization of systems nationally. That's how I would see the roles of the provinces and the federal government, and I really hope that I answered your question. Yes, absolutely. And we need to remember the importance of the provinces. And now to Ms. Leclerc. You represent a big company and you started this traceability system in 2010. I would like to know what are the main challenges that you had to face, and could you also tell me more on smaller suppliers and niche businesses? What difficulties might they face if they want to be inspired by your traceability, and what would be the federal government's role to help them out? Answer. Of course, thank you for the question. I think that in my speech I raised the two main challenges, the scientific name versus the common name. We have suppliers who don't know the Latin name or don't use it very frequently, whereas the common name can cause confusion because it can refer to over 40 species, and the list of species of the CIFIA is also difficult to update. It's a daily challenge for us. The geographical location as well and the country of origin can cause confusion. It's a challenge every day. And you also mentioned smaller suppliers, and traceability takes time, investment in time and money, and it can be more difficult to document all those elements. I think that generally the industry would benefit from further education on the scientific name and the geographical location versus the country of origin. And another thing that is a daily challenge is to document the supply chain to the vessel. We can't do it with the systems that we currently have, which we test things randomly, and to see the chain from the vessel to the port to the distributor to our companies, and it requires a lot of documentation for the suppliers. It's very difficult for them for all the different batches because of the current systems that we have. So if it's costly for you, I can't even imagine how costly it must be for smaller suppliers. And I see you talked about the 5 principles. You talked about socio-economic development, and you also talked about labeling. There are certain rules that seem that they are not well adapted and could be a disadvantage to our local producers and products. Do you think that improving these rules would make it so that our fishers and others could be more competitive with foreign suppliers? Answer. Yes, a product that is fished here but processed elsewhere will be considered processed elsewhere, will be considered as a product from elsewhere. So yes, it would be an advantage to change things.
We'll now go to Ms. Barron for 6 minutes or less, please.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you to the witnesses here today. I have lots of questions, so I'm going to get right into it. My first question goes to Madame Leclerc. Am I pronouncing your name correctly?
It's quite all right. It's Leclerc.
Leclerc, thank you. Yes, I don't want to pronounce your name wrong the whole time of my questions. I've done that before. Madame Leclerc, I wanted to ask a specific question building off of the cost that was previously being discussed. And one of the items that came up in previous committee meetings was the cost to the consumers and how that was a barrier in being able to offer these, this clear traceability. And I'm wondering if you saw impacts on the consumer, how those costs, what the impacts of those costs that you're talking about were and how they impacted the consumer directly, if at all.
Je dirais que
I would say that I don't work a lot with the prices. I work with the assessment of sustainability and traceability. So I would have a hard time telling you about the prices specifically, the costs. There are certain certifications that could have an impact on the final price, the final cost, but for traceability, I don't have an answer that I can give today.
Okay, thank you. Perhaps there might be somebody that could send us a written response around this, because for me, it is an important aspect of the study. If you're able to get that, that would be great.
je vais voir
Sorry, I'll
ce que je
let you
peux faire.
respond.
I'll see what I can do.
Great,
voir ce que je
thank
peux faire.
you. The other question, because I'm very focused on the impacts on the consumer here, because it is a big piece. And I'm just wondering if you know at all, have you been receiving any consumer feedback, any increase of sales, what have consumers and how have consumers been responding to your improved systems that you've put into place to have that traceability of seafood?
Certainement. Comme c'est un
It's not a recent program. It's been in place since 2010, so I didn't get to see the impact of its launch in 2010. However, in the past few years, metros in Quebec developed what is called fraîcheur traçable, so traceable freshness, and it's something that we highlight in stores and on our flyers, and we have a lot of positive comments, a lot of people who didn't know that we had that in place and who were very satisfied to see that we offer traceability, that sustainability of the products is important to us.
Great, thank you. I have another question from Madame Canet. Am I pronouncing your last name right? Canet?
Yes, you do.
Great. Madame Canet, I was wondering if you can speak a little bit. Now, I know you can only speak to your work and your experience, but I'm wondering if you can highlight a little bit. You had mentioned that Gaspé lobster harvesters are operating at a higher standard of electronic tracking. And I'm wondering if you can share a little bit with the committee around what that generally looks for others. Like, how does it compare to what's happening in other circumstances to make your process, that high standard that we're talking about?
Okay, so the e-log responds to DFO's requirements for the declaration of the capture that are done by DFO. We did work on two projects for the traceability, one with Metro, actually, and I think that we were together on the working groups, isn't it? So one of the aspect was clearly to get a connection with the the systems, the computing systems, the various softwares used throughout the value chain, how we could collect those data, how they could be transmitted from one actor of the value chain to the other, knowing that at the basis was the e-log system, because the traceability, if it has to start from the boat, if we really want something that is solid for the end consumer. And so these data could, for data protection reasons, and for compatibility of systems, it's difficult to put into a traceability system. And so one needs to look at devices that can be used right from the boat. Are we looking at the individual animal, or are we looking at the box, le lot qui est débarqué par le pêcheur?
The batch given by the fisher.
Would also require the fisherman to adapt its practice at costs for him in order to start the traceability system. Does it answer your question?
Yes, thank you. And I don't know if I have
No, your time is up.
time left. Thank
It's
you.
got a little bit over.
Thank you, Chair.
We'll now continue on for 5 minutes or less with Mr. Arnold, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you both witnesses for being here today. I'll start out with Ms. Leclerc, if I could. You mentioned in the exchange with my colleague, Mr. Perkins, that your chain has certain labeling requirements, but then other pieces of it are left up to the suppliers. Could you elaborate a little bit more on that? And who would be eventually responsible for auditing and accountability of what's actually on the labels?
Oui, tout à fait.
Our suppliers of national brands are responsible for their labels. We cannot impose anything. We recommend that they follow a process that is similar to ours. We verify their products, and if it doesn't respond to our criteria, if it's not a species that is healthy, then it will not be sold in our establishment. But with regards to the packaging and the labeling, they are responsible for it. And their standards and requirements need to be respected at the provincial level as well. But for the voluntary parts, often it is set aside. For our products, we do the verifications to ensure that the information that we received is authentic. That way, when we put traceability on our products, it truly represents the product.
And does anyone audit your systems of traceability?
No.
No?
No.
Thank you. I'll move on to Ms. Canet, if I could. Would you say that traceability adds value to the harvesters, processors, and retailers in the chain?
Yes, certainly. And I'll give you the example of the Gaspé lobster fishermen situation in 2020 at the start of the pandemic. We have been, because our lobster was identifiable, we have been able to have the support of the distributors such as Metro, who were able to put forward in their retail shops identifiable Quebec products, and that allowed our buyers to maintain the price that they were selling to Metro and some more minor chains. So ultimately, the Gaspé lobster fishermen were able to maintain a bit their price, their selling price to the buyer, to the main buyer.
Thank you. Lobster is a higher value product, and it's possible to tag individual pieces at the time of catch, where it's not current practice to tag other fish species, not to tag the individual pieces. Do other harvesters within your organization have traceability programs, and is it possible for them to trace their products if they fish?
No, and you're right. For example, for snow crab, it's extremely difficult. To my knowledge, there is no snow crab traceability program that is currently in place at the level of the fishermen. However, that would, in order to trace this kind of seafood, one will need to really work by law. I'm not sure how to say it in English. So, and that
by lot.
So, which will require the fishermen to develop certain logistics on their boat, and same thing for the landings, in order for the lots, the boxes to be identified from the beginning, and that
this. But there's no system in place for other fisheries?
No, there is none, not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Arnold. You're dead on your time. We'll now go to Mr. Hanley for 5 minutes or less, please.
Thank you. Thank you again to the witnesses. I really appreciate your presence here. I'm learning lots. And actually, I had a similar question to Mr. Arnold, so maybe I will follow up on that question avec Madame Canet. And
with Madame Canet,
if you could expand a little bit on that. The example of how this is a method that applies obviously very well to lobsters, but could you expand on how this model has been taken up either by other lobster fisheries or not, and to other species?
Okay, this model was attempted quite a few years ago by the Magdalen Island Fisheries, but they didn't pursue with that because that is relatively costly, and that it requires quite a lot of implications from the fishermen at the beginning, and it is also costly to provide them with the aliens, etc. I'm aware that some traceability systems have been attempted in Nova Scotia, also in British Columbia, but more at the distribution level. One thing, so for other species, I'm not aware of anything that was put in place at all. But maybe if you could clarify your question a little bit more, sorry.
No, I think that was right on. Thank you. For Madame Leclerc, I'd like to know a little bit more about how you use the DNA testing and how that compares to, say, DNA testing by CFIA and perhaps other organizations.
For the DNA testing program, it is created according to the risk represented by the product. We have different criteria that will determine if the product is at a high risk of fraud. For example, is it a whole fish? That would be less risk than a fillet of fish, for example. And there's also, for sampling, we don't do DNA testing, we do sampling. We have a lab that does the testing for us in order to find the Latin name of the product declared by our suppliers. With regards to what the CFIA does, or other organizations that have national DNA programs, we use a similar technology to ensure that our information is correct.
Thank you. And going back to how you, again, Madame Leclerc, how you began this, when you go back to 2010, what led you to taking this on? Presumably it was giving you some market advantage. How much uptake have you seen by other chains? What would the advice be that you would offer them in starting up?
Je pense qu'un bon coup de...
I believe that in 2010, Metro did something quite good. We hired a specialist in oceanography, so someone with an expertise in that field. So for other retailers in Canada, they should perhaps hire someone who knows and is able to put in place and implement the processes. Metro decided to go ahead with that kind of program, and it was something that they had been examining for years. Fish and seafood is more complex than other food categories because there are so many different species. So in working with different external partners and NGOs, it allowed for the development of that program for 2010.
Thank you, Mr. Hanley. You got about 10 seconds left. I don't think you'll get a question and an answer in that length of time. We'll now go to Monsieur Grand for 2.5 minutes, please.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. Perhaps I'll get both witnesses to respond if we have enough time. Consumers are lucky to have companies and organizations that are like yours, who have worked hard on traceability. It's more than just putting a label or a tag on lobster. It's creating trust. It's stimulating the economy in different regions. There's also the matter of public health. So, beyond your private and corporate role, you play an important role for Canada to improve traceability systems. I would like to know if there was one big thing, one big improvement that needed to be done by the federal government at this time, what would it be and what form would it take?
Vous y allez en premier?
Do you want to go first? We only have 1.5 minutes left. Go ahead, Ms. Kenney. I believe that one of the first things would be to work on the national market in the short term, to have a better traceability. The fewer steps between a fisher and the final consumer, the easier it is to trace the different steps taken by that product. And also, by favoring a local market, it would allow for improvements on the origin of products. And to give you a simple example with lobster. At the beginning of a season, lobster comes from Quebec, from the Magdalen Islands, and from the Gaspé. But as the season moves on, for different reasons that we don't know, processors decide to sell processed lobster instead of live lobster. We don't know why consumers no longer want live lobster. And then there's also imports that could come from the United States. And all the batches are mixed together. So if the federal government and the provincial governments could highlight the use of the live product, or as fresh as possible, as little processed as possible, that would help with the traceability of products and a guarantee to the final consumer. There are systems that could be developed that would allow for little shortcuts, because one of the issues is volume. In Quebec, it's high volume, and to distribute it, it is easier to sell it to a large processor that will mix all the batches. Whereas if we were to put in place distribution systems for smaller quantities, it would allow for the development of a shortcut and to limit the number of interventions.
Thank you for that. We're going a good bit over, but we'll now go to Ms. Barron for 2.5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Chair. My question is to Madame Leclerc, and I'm wondering if you can expand a little bit. I was listening to you speak about the legislation that's in place that results in some of your products from national brand products, that there's a recommendation that they have that labeling in place, but it is not a requirement because of all these pieces. I'm wondering if you could speak a little bit more about how having clear legislation in place might be of support, if at all, to you at Metro in having that harmonization, and how that might impact you specifically in your role.
C'est sûr que d'avoir une exigence légale.
To have a legal requirement for traceability on the labeling would be good. And it would allow suppliers to document the traceability on the packaging. If there are fewer steps, that would be great, because sometimes it could be a long process, and it would make the assessment simpler. And for the average consumer to have traceability on all products, regardless of where they're sold, it would be important, because they could make an informed decision. We could do better awareness raising, and they could also examine their own knowledge and values.
Thank you. And I'll see if I could sneak one more in to Madame Canet. I'm wondering if you could perhaps speak a little bit around your thoughts on how these steps that you've put in place have helped to protect the ecosystem that is all, such an essential piece of what we're talking about here. Any environmental pieces that you've seen or thoughts around that?
Yeah. The system that we have put in place is within a global approach that we have for our lobster fisheries. The purpose is obviously to protect the environment that our fishermen are working within, and also to protect their future. Fishermen are very much subject to, they don't have any control over the prices, etc. So it was essential for them to have a global approach to support their stocks, their environment, get the MSC certification, and to put that forward as a guarantee for the end consumer, because that represents a lot of investments, millions of dollars over the years from the fishermen to put those first traceability steps and identification of origin for the end consumer. And so that is part of a global approach that we have, environmental and economical, for our fishermen.
Thank you, Ms. Barron. Your time is up, of course. That concludes our first hour of testimony. To get into another 5-minute round would certainly put us way over for the next session. We have 3 more witnesses waiting to start. I want to say thank you to both witnesses today for their cooperation and appearing before committee, albeit by Zoom. And we'll change over now. We'll recess for a couple of seconds just to switch over from one panel to the next. Thanks again.
Thank you. Bye.
your mic. When you are not speaking, your mic should be on mute. When speaking, please speak clearly and slowly. I'd now like to welcome our second panel of witnesses from the Marine Stewardship Council. We have Mr. Curtis Hain, Programme Director. From the Prince Edward Island Fishermen's Association, we have Mr. Bobby Jenkins, President, Molly Aylward, Executive Director, and Ian McPherson, Senior Advisor, who of course has been at committee several times before, no stranger to this committee. And from Sea Choice, we have Christina Caligari, Sustainable Seafood Coordinator. We will now have, okay, so Mr. Jenkins is not there. Okay, perfect. My notes said he was, but one less to worry about. We'll now go to our witnesses for their opening remarks. We'll start off with Mr. Hain for 5 minutes or less, please.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks for the opportunity to provide input into this committee. My name is Curtis Hain, and I'm Program Council in Canada. I'm speaking to you from Victoria, British Columbia. The MSC is a global nonprofit organization that works to end overfishing around the world. We work with scientists, fisheries industry experts, and other nonprofits. And our goal is to improve the way that the ocean is fished through our MSC fisheries and our chain of custody standard. The MSC program incentivizes sustainable fishing practices globally. And the MSC program is the most recognized sustainable seafood certification in Canada and the world. Supply chain businesses handling MSC seafood must meet our MSC chain of custody standard. It's a traceability standard, which ensures that fish and seafood sold with the blue label has come from fisheries certified as sustainable against the MSC fishery standard. Our chain of custody program is a rigorous and independent verification system that follows seafood with the MSC bluefish label from the fishery to the final consumer. And it requires that all companies involved in their purchase, processing, or sale are certified and submit to third-party annual audits for traceability. MSC seafood is accurately labeled, enabling consumers to make an informed choice in fraud. DNA testing has shown that our species mislabeling for MSC seafood is less than 1%, much lower than other studies that the committee's heard about, or for other seafood products and other global estimates of mislabeling rates. We regularly monitor MSC labeled products for integrity, run investigations that trace products back through the supply chain, and unannounced audits as certificate holders are built into our program. Participation in the program is voluntary though. The fisheries and companies that are MSC certified do it on their own accord and are committed and invested to meeting our standard. There are 327 chain of custody certificates across Canada, covering over 1,850 different locations audited for traceability for MSC certified seafood. And this represents over 400 products with MSC eco-label that were sold to Canadian consumers last year. That's 400 different labeled products. Despite this, there are still significant gaps in coverage for certified seafood in Canada, particularly in the food service sector. The MSC's research also shows that Canadians want to know that their seafood is traceable. Consumers want to know the fish they can buy can be traced back to a known and trusted source. We believe that supply chain assurance and traceability systems should be a requirement for credible claims of sustainability, and we support ongoing advancement of traceability efforts as they're essential to provide legal, sustainable, and correctly labeled seafood for Canadian consumers and for all Canadians to sell seafood into international markets. Thank you for the opportunity to provide input, and I welcome your questions.
Thank you for that. We'll now go to, I think Mr. McPherson is going to speak first, and you're splitting your time, or not?
Yes, thanks very much, Chair MacDonald. The Prince Edward Island Fishermen's Association appreciates the invitation and opportunity to address the Common Standing Committee on Fisheries and Oceans and to speak to the important topic of traceability of fish and seafood products. The PIFA represents over 1,275 captains that make up our island inshore fleet. Our captains have significant investments in their operations and take great pride in being the first part of the supply chain, delivering high quality seafood to domestic and offshore markets. The fishery in Canada is heavily regulated, with conservation of the resource being a cornerstone to ensure future generations can participate in this lifestyle and career. We feel the traceability of seafood is important in terms of keeping our high caliber international reputation intact, ensuring lower and higher value species are not overexploited, preserving international sustainability certifications, and elevating consumer confidence in the seafood products they purchase at the retail level. Our ocean ecosystem must strike a delicate balance and maintain a food chain pyramid which allows all species to survive. Some of the plentiful but lower value species cannot be overfished or this balance will be disrupted. For the past 6 years, the PIFA has been developing an electronic log application that can be used by island fishers to replace the current catch data method of paper logbooks. Once implemented, the e-logs will provide real-time data on primary catches and bycatch. It is our understanding that for some species, current system information is not completely captured and summarized for up to 6 months after the closure of a particular fishing season. The PIFA has invested extensive time and resources into this app so that harvesters can access a unit that not only meets the Department of Fisheries and Oceans parameters for function, but is user-friendly and offered at a reasonable cost to the fishers. It is critical that fishers are involved in the process of knowing where their catch data goes, who has access to the data, and where the data is stored. Molly?
Good afternoon. Thank you, Ian. In addition to improved data collection, it's imperative that DFO and the Government of Canada recognize the contribution by independent owner-operators in terms of food security. As the past 2 years have shown us, supply chains can be disrupted in a moment's notice. It is incumbent that we maintain seafood supplies for Canadians, and independent owner-operators are the best way to keep the resource and the benefits in local communities. The past 2 years have also shown us that the worldwide demand for seafood is unprecedented. High demand for product can be a double-edged sword in that although an improved price has been paid to fishers and the others in the supply chain, the pressure to overfish a stock or fish a stock illegally can occur without proper monitoring and enforcement. A significant majority of fishers seek two important things. One, that fishers be paid a fair and financially sustainable amount for their product. And two, the resources must be responsibly managed so that current and future fishers may remain viable in an industry that they know and love. Although unreported catches do not seem to be an extensive problem on Prince Edward Island, we are concerned that this is a growing problem and that industry, provincial governments, and federal governments need to find effective solutions. The PEIFA has been and continues to be a vocal advocate for consistent and widespread enforcement of all resource-related offenses under the Fisheries Act. Various sectors of the industry are working towards bringing stability to the sector after many years of financial returns that were insufficient for harvesters and other parts of the supply chain. This sustainability can only be achieved by ensuring our resources are protected and all fishers are recording all catches in an established and consistent manner. The outlook for the future will remain positive if our stocks are protected and data is collected and managed in a responsible and consistent manner for all species and fishers. By doing this, we can ensure the prosperity of the current fishery in both the short and the long term. This concludes our opening remarks, and we'd be pleased to answer any questions that the committee may have. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And we'll move right into our questioning, and I'll go to Mr. Perkins first for 6 minutes or less, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, witnesses, for appearing. Oh, we have another witness.
Yes. I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm trying to rush things along, unfortunately. But we do have another witness, of course, Christina Caligari, and I apologise for trying to skip over you, from the Sustainable Seafood Coordinator, for 5 minutes or less, please.
Thank you very much. Hello, bonjour. Merci.
Thank you for the opportunity to present before the committee.
Is excited to see the committee conducting a study on improving seafood labeling and traceability. It is critically important to provide transparency to consumers, ensure sustainable seafood production, and protect the long-term viability of the seafood sector. Sea Choice is a Canadian partnership among the David Suzuki Foundation, Ecology Action Centre, and Living Ocean Society. We've been working together since 2006 to improve sustainability and transparency of seafood. Today, I'd like to focus on three main reasons why Canada's seafood labeling and traceability standards need improvement and provide our key recommendations. First, Canadians deserve to know more about their seafood, but Canada's seafood labels do not allow consumers to make an informed choice to buy sustainably or support domestic producers. There's very little information required on a seafood product, including the common name and country of origin. And as we've heard, even those pieces of information often don't help a consumer. In 2019, Sea Choice conducted an extensive review of the CFI fish list. This is a list that provides guidance for the accepted common names for seafood sold in Canada. And we found numerous examples of generic common names such as shrimp used for 41 different species. We also found, for example, red snapper was used to identify species of rockfish, and these are two entirely different types of fish. And the country of origin label that's required on imported products simply refers to where the product was last processed, not where it was caught or farmed. We also know that Canadians want more transparency. Sea Choice's survey from November 2021 showed that 91% of Canadians think it is somewhat to very important that traceability laws require companies to track information such as what the species is and how and where it was caught or farmed. Second, Canada's traceability regulations do not currently allow for accurate and important data to be passed from the point of harvest to the end consumer. Although it's required by DFO that information such as the species or gear type is recorded in logbooks depending on the fishery, this information does not then enter the supply chain because our federal food regulations don't require businesses to do so. Canada also lacks robust import requirements, leaving us at risk of importing products associated with illegal, unregulated, or unreported fishing or mislabeled seafood. This especially puts Canadian businesses, such as major retailers, at risk by allowing illegal or critically endangered species to go unnoticed and sold to consumers. We also continue to fall behind other countries. Recently, the United States is looking to strengthen their import monitoring program to include all species of fish and shellfish, and also have proposed to extend their domestic traceability requirements to establishments like restaurants. Finally, a standard government-regulated traceability and labeling system would provide a level playing field for industry. Seafood is not immune to greenwashing, an issue that most Canadians are concerned with. In fact, 83% of Canadians are somewhat to very concerned about greenwashing. And detailed product labeling and traceability are important tools to make sure that companies can back up their environmental claims. In 2019, Sea Choice conducted a study, and we found that of the self-declared claims on packages, such as sustainably caught or responsibly sourced, 41% had no evidence to back up their claims. So a standard system would ensure that businesses who don't invest in traceability and better labeling can't undercut those that do. So to repeat those three reasons why we need improvements: 1, our seafood labels are not detailed enough. 2, we lack the systems to ensure proper traceability of a product and its associated information. And 3, a government standard would provide a level playing field for industry. So on to our recommendations for the committee members. First, we recommend developing stronger import requirements and a traceability system that tracks information for all seafood sold in Canada. Second, we recommend improving seafood labeling standards to require the scientific name, whether it's wild or farmed, its harvest location, and the harvest method. Third, we recommend the government implement proper measures to ensure data verification and enforcement. And finally, we recommend the government establish an interdepartmental committee to ensure that all relevant departments as well as stakeholders can work together on this. Thank you for your time, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you for that, and you were almost dead on your time after me trying to jump over you and not have you speak at all. I do apologise again for that. We'll now go to our questioning by the members, to our witnesses, for 6 minutes or less. Mr. Perkins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you again, witnesses, for your presentation on this important study. My first question is to Ms. Caligari, if I've got it right.
Caligari.
Caligari. Your submission to the government on the seafood labeling is, I found interesting. It seems to be supported by some of the other testimony that we've heard here, from the Oceana study through to some of the academic studies. In it, you said, our studies have found that retailers are doing a relatively good job of telling Canadians whether their seafood is wild caught, less good job with labeling its products as farmed, and doing a very poor job including the actual species, country of harvest, and product, whether it was caught or farmed label, which is, I think, a bit of what your process was at. So, and you also mentioned that the U.S. is strengthening things. So, what would you do specifically in terms of either the optional things that are in our CFA IA regulations now and making them required, or what are the list of things that you would like to see made mandatory on the consumer packaging?
Thank you for the question. So SeaChoice has been working for many years on encouraging better seafood labeling regulations. So specifically, we would like to see the scientific name, an indication whether or not the product is wild or farmed, the gear type used or harvest method, and of course the true geographic origin. So not just the product of declaration, that being the country of origin. So that's what we would like to see. And in my presentation, I also mentioned right now, unfortunately, some of this data is collected, but it's just not being passed along through the rest of the supply chain. And so we'd like to see more harmonization and data being carried from the point of harvest all the way to the consumer.
Thank you. When you say point of origin, are you meaning both caught and processed separately, because they can be separate?
Yeah, so we mean where it was caught or harvested, being like if it was farmed, for example, so the location of the farm.
Okay. And as a follow-up on your comment that 41% of the labeling that claims sustainability don't have evidence of that, and I think we've heard that round figures from other witnesses. And we heard, I think, from CFIA, if I recall, this is going from memory, so it could be wrong, but from CFIA that the only requirement they have on sustainability is whether or not the country has regulations or not whether they're enforced or what the level of regulations are. So I'm wondering what your definition is, and perhaps Mr. Haynes as well, of sustainability in terms of the labeling.
Thank you for the question. So we don't actually, the CFIA's regulation actually don't have a specific definition for sustainability in terms of it being on a package. And so that's one of the issues that we have identified for when companies are making these claims on packages without any evidence to back it up. We would define sustainability as, in terms of it being on the package, as having, those 3 to 4 key pieces of information that can provide information on where it was caught, how, and what species it is, as a way to then use that information to look up its sustainability status. So that could be using, for example, the Seafood Watch Monterey Bay Aquarium ranking system to look at those pieces of information and say, was that product harvested in a sustainable way or farmed in a sustainable way? And I'm sure my colleague Curtis can also touch on the sustainability piece from a certification perspective as well.
Okay, thank you. I think Mr. Zimmer has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So in regard to your report on IUU fishing, and I'm referencing Ms. Caligari, it's one concern that I've represented anglers many times and have fished with them along the banks of the Fraser, et cetera. And they always are asked to do less and fish less because of the threatened stocks, yet we still see gill nets getting drawn across the water, catching fish that we just simply don't want to catch. But I think most Canadians don't understand the implications and how it contributes to organized crime and the IUU aspect of it. And I guess what I'm asking you, traceability, how would it impact the IUU fishing that's occurring domestically within our borders in Canada?
Thank you for the question. So in terms of IUU fishing domestically, we of course don't see as much evidence of slave labor or human rights abuses in Canada's supply from domestically produced product, but we do see instances, for example, of unreported catch or illegal catches in a different regard. For example, you see instances of high grading. So in some of our fisheries that are sorry, I'm getting some feedback.
Yeah, Ms. Caligari, my time is very short, but maybe I'll just ask you more specifically. I've mentioned it in previous...
Actually, your time is up.
Okay, I guess that's it then.
You wouldn't share the big lot. We'll now go down to Mr. Morrissey for 6 minutes or less, please.
Thank you, Chair. My question is to Ms. Aylward. In your opening comment, you made reference to all fishers must be reporting all their catches, and government must be active in ensuring sustainability. Could you expand to the committee on are fishers reporting all their catches in all species currently?
Thank you for the question. Yes, I guess we feel that it should be consistent that all fishers do report their catches on a consistent basis.
Would you recommend to the committee that consistency be applied? Because we've had some alarming testimony given to this committee on this study and previous studies about the growing practice of unreported and underreported seafood, primarily lobster and crab, which are high value.
Sure. I would invite my colleague, Mr. Ian McPherson, to weigh in on this question as well.
Thanks, Mr. Morrissey. Yes, it is a concern. As you know, that in many fisheries, there's logbook requirements, their quota fisheries, whatever, but due to the fairly significant escalation in the value of seafood over the last few years, we are hearing of incidents where unreported catches seem to be increasing. And certainly the e-logs will, provide more real-time data, but it's a concern to the industry because particularly on Prince Edward Island, we're so exposed in terms of our dependency on lobster. We would like to see some of those other species bounce back, but at the end of the day, we have to protect these valuable resources the best way we can. Thank you.
Do you see, Mr. McPherson or Mr. Aylward, do you see the growing practice of unreported landings in lobster and crab undermining the very MSC certification that we depend on so much in international marketplaces?
Well, as we had mentioned in our opening remarks, preserving our international sustainability certifications is exactly what we're referring to there, Mr. Morrissey. And yes, we don't want to be put in that position. I think it's a situation that we can get a handle on. But at the end of the day, we have a stellar international reputation out there for not only our preservation of the resource, but the quality of our seafood. And we want to make sure that's maintained.
If I could ask you, you're appearing before the committee on the issue of seafood labeling and proper labeling, but the study has also touched on the area of unreported and underreported. What you represent, as you stated, over 1,200 fishers, independent fishers in Prince Edward Island. What recommendation would you make to the committee for government to move on to get a better handle on eliminating what could be considered a growing practice of unreported and underreported landings?
Well, I can't really speak to the It hasn't been discussed at our board level in terms of what would happen after the catches hit the wharf. But as I had mentioned earlier, one of the reasons the PIFA has invested extensively in the e-log is to have a mechanism for real-time data, accurate reporting of catches, and we feel that's an important first step. But perhaps, that is a topic that the committee may look at more extensively down the way. Thank you.
But the e-log reporting is only as accurate as the information entered into e-log. There's no independent verification of that, is there?
Well, because we don't have a system in place yet in Canada, no, perhaps Mr. Hain could speak to that in terms of in other jurisdictions with electronic reporting, what part of the MSC audit process is. Certainly PEI has been a leader in getting our certification and maintaining it with very few conditions. But that's a whole area that probably needs to be discussed more extensively.
I have a general question to all three. Could you comment, are fishers losing value as a result of mislabeling and inaccurate labeling of seafood products? I'll start with Ms. Caligari. And then Mr. Hain, if you want.
Thank you for the question. I certainly think in some circumstances, yes, harvesters who don't know where their product is going could be mislabeled down the supply chain as something else that could be sold for a cheaper price.
And I'll respond to that from an MSC perspective. So fisheries and supply chain actors that are using the MSC logo and selling certified seafood, they do so voluntarily. And a lot of time that is to gain market access or market premium. So I think there is value to be gleaned from assurance of source, traceability, and sustainability. So I think there is value for fishers in demonstrating that. And we've seen that.
Question of clarification, Ms. Caligari.
Thank you, Mr. Morrissey. Your 6 minutes has expired. We'll now go to Mr. Grant for 6 minutes or less, please.
Merci beaucoup et merci à nos trois invités.
Thank you very much, and thank you to our three witnesses. Those were three very interesting presentations. I have questions for Ms. Caligari. I really liked your presentation. Having a responsible and sustainable fishing is in the interest of the sustainability of our fishing industry and for public health, of course. And I know that you worked a lot on a report on traceability and labeling. And question, if we were to have one big step to take today in having better labeling, what would that step be, and what is the federal government's role in that?
Thank you for the question. In terms of one big step right now, I would say that making sure that we are creating a interdepartmental task force with many stakeholders involved in this process will be the most important first step in getting this rolling. We've identified in previous meetings that the FOPO has had that there is a gap between what the CFIA is focused on in terms of health and safety and the data that DFO is collecting, and how those are not really coming together. So I think there's an opportunity for departments to come together and discuss this as a way to modernize the way that we collect data and how that information is shared between the different departments.
And to come back to the same question, not acting with the current system and the current legislation and regulation, if we were to describe the risks for Quebecers and for Canadians to maintain the system as is, what would be the main risk?
I apologize. I didn't fully get the translation there.
C'est l'histoire de notre vie.
That's the story of our life. I will just repeat the question. So, there are risks associated to bad labeling. What are the main risks?
If I'm getting your question correctly, of course, not labeling products either as if they're mislabeled or not being truthful, or simply, having a product that's from Quebec but maybe is processed in China and ends up being a product of China is going to pose risk for the producers who are trying to sell their catch either domestically or to other countries, to recognize that it is as a product of Canada. So there's a risk there in terms of producers not being recognized for that.
Merci. Et j'aimerais...
Thank you. And to come back to Mr. Morrissey's question, I found it quite interesting, the matter of value. And having good labeling and good traceability would benefit the best players in the supply chain, to the producers. It would be best for those who have the best quality. And with all of the issues with the labeling system, or perhaps I will ask my question to all the witnesses. Can you tell me, from the fisherman to the retailer, who benefits from improper labeling?
I can speak to that. And I think it goes back to some of the earlier points raised, is that there's not a level playing field across all actors in the supply chain. And without mandated traceability, Ms. Calgary talked about the point that there's greenwashing that occurs in the market. Our program takes some cost. I mean, it relies on third-party audits, not only for our certified fisheries, but for everyone that owns that seafood up until the time it's labeled. So that takes cost and voluntary cost to good supply chain actors. When there's not an even playing field and logos can be applied to products that claim their sustainability without the assurance to back it up, I think that's the issue in terms of evening out that playing field across our supply chain and ensuring that those doing the right thing, looking to third-party certifications or applying traceability, are rewarded for their efforts.
Je sais pas si quelqu'un d'autre voulait...
I don't know if anyone else would like to answer. If not, I'll carry on with my questions.
Là-dessus, encore une fois...
So, on this topic, and my question is for all the witnesses, if I understood correctly, it is correct for processed products, so I could purchase a product that was processed elsewhere. We don't know necessarily what species is found in the box that we receive. We purchase it as a consumer and we don't know what we're buying. How do we compare to other countries, to the European system, for example? Are we doing quite well, or should we be ashamed of our current system?
I can take this question. Certainly, we've looked to the European Union for many years in terms of their labeling standards. So they do provide the catch area on products, they provide the scientific name, and they also provide the gear type. So I would say Canada is unfortunately not keeping up with some of what we consider to be the best standards globally. And as I mentioned in my presentation, the US is also taking steps to improve here.
Thank you, Mr. Goran. The time is up. It'll now go to Ms. Barron for 6 minutes or less, please.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you to the witnesses who are here today and for all this great information that you're bringing forward. I'm wondering, I have some questions specifically for Ms. Calgary and perhaps Mr. Hain as well. But specific to Sea Choice, I know you've spoken a bit about the annual reports that are out with all this great information around the state of seafood traceability programs in Canada and so on. And I'm wondering if you can just provide some basic Reader's Digest, Coles Notes information around what that survey entails as far as participation rates, how is it conducted? I'm just trying to understand the weight of this survey as we move forward and hearing these responses.
Thank you. Just to clarify, are you talking about the greenwashing study that we conducted?
Yes, please.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so that report we did in 2019, and we intended to look at across Canada, cover all the major retailers, and see whether or not, as consumer demand increases for sustainable seafood, whether or not we could actually see companies providing this information about sustainability on their products and whether or not that was verifiable. So what we did find is that for products that had a sustainability claim, like a certification, so that would be like MSC, or what we called endorsement, so that would be like an Oceanwise logo or like a Dolphin Safe logo on a package. Those fared a lot better because they actually have third-party verification and information attached to those statements, whereas what we called the self-declared claims, so where it just said like responsibly sourced, sustainable, just threw out those words, we had a really tough time actually verifying whether or not those products were sustainable as they were saying, because very little had that information on the package to determine that. And then we took a few more steps to actually either contact the company to get information or to look through their website. And we did end up finding that 41% weren't able to provide information that would verify the product as sustainable. And so, we concluded that we didn't have enough information to verify that.
Thank you. And so you're saying it started in 2019, just to clarify? And you've
Yes,
had it annually
yes.
every year. So have you seen any changes as, positive or negative in because you're giving a report on greenwashing, so there's some accountability mechanisms in place now. And are you seeing any changes since you've began this annual report?
So that report we haven't continued annually. The reports that we have done annually have been our DNA testing reports that we conducted over 2017 and 2018, and we've seen little improvement on that front, unfortunately.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. I can't agree more with the importance of this report, as we know greenwashing impacts our consumer confidence and the choice that we're able to make. So I appreciate the work that you're doing around this. And I apologize, I have too many questions and my brain is trying to wrap around here. But the question here to Mr. Hain around the 1%, says the 1% of the certified product is mislabeled. And I'm wondering if you could just clarify around how this chain of custody is maintained, and if you can expand a little bit further on how it feels like that's a very low number. And so I'm wondering if you can speak a little bit more to that.
Yeah, and thank you for the question. And it's less than 1%. So we've done a few, we repeat and periodically repeat DNA testing of MSC certified products as an assurance mechanism through our program to make sure our chain of custody is working. But to answer your previous question, how it's maintained, we hold both our sustainability standard, and I realized I didn't answer the question before. So it's ensuring that fisheries are certified to ensure that their fisheries are sustainable. It looks at the health of the stock. It looks at whether they're mitigating environmental impacts like bycatch or habitat damage, and the fishery is well managed. So anything with our blue logo needs to be from a certified fishery to start. Then anyone who owns the seafood must have annual audits for chain of custody. So those are third-party audits. We hold a traceability standard that all of these companies are audited against, and they're audited annually. So typically, outside of the pandemic, there would be an auditor that comes into the warehouse, looks at all of the traceability systems in place, can provide traceback through the program, ensures that if they're using origin of catch labeling and species labeling, that's applied correctly. So it's a quite rigorous program that's always also being continually updated. So all of these people that are all of these supply chain actors that are those 372 partners in Canada undergo annual audits for traceability of MSC certified products.
Thank you. And I have more questions, but I think my last question that I'll be able to fit in this time frame. I was wondering, Ms. Calgary, if you can expand a little bit more on some of the shortcomings that Sea Choice has identified in the voluntary certification systems that are currently in place. I know you've had some information, but I was wondering if you can expand on that a little bit more.
Thank you for the question. Yeah, so we've found that unfortunately, when left to voluntary or left voluntarily up to industry, we don't see as many companies providing the information that we feel is important on a label. And in doing so, we find that you're going to see maybe good actors providing some of this information, but the bad actors will maybe just provide a generic common name salmon, and we don't know where that salmon's coming from, or a halibut that wasn't fished sustainably. So it definitely hurts both the consumers and our producers here in Canada when these systems are just voluntary, especially because of the uptake.
Thank you, Ms. Barron. We'll now go to Mr. Arnold for 5 minutes or less, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'll just have two quick questions, then I'll be passing my time to Mr. Small. First of all, for Mr. Hain, you mentioned the Marine Stewardship Council. Their systems are audited, third party, and so on. Can you tell us who does those audits?
Sure. So we have all auditors that are auditing against their fishery standard or chain of custody standard need to be accredited by, it's called Accreditation Services International Accreditation Board. And there's a number of, we call them certification assessment bodies that perform these audits. So an auditor will be contracted out by any partner, any fishery that wants to undertake an audit. And then they conduct those audits. So it's independent third-party audits. We do not. We're just standard holders, so we don't actually complete any of the audits ourselves.
Okay, thank you. Next question is for Mr. McPherson. Mr. McPherson, would you say that traceability does add or would add value to all harvesters, processors, and retailers that you know of?
Mr. Arnold, just have a personal opinion, but I would say yes, because the shore price should reflect the value in the marketplace. And, if the supply chains to remain healthy, the benefits should translate right from the wharf all the way through the supply chain. So, harvesters want to be paid fairly, and they want to be paid appropriately for the catch that they brought in and not have substitutes. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Small.
Thank you. So, Mr. Chair, my question is to Mr. Hain regarding MSC Blue Label. How much of a disadvantage is it to producers in selling their product that don't have your label?
It's a difficult question to ask, because how our program works is trying to incentivize consumers and retailers to choose what our logo, certified products, and look for our logo when out shopping. So we kind of work at it from the other side of the coin, is just making sure that people are choosing certified sustainable seafood. So what we've seen over the last several years is that there's been a large uptick both in certified seafood sold in Canada, in North America, and globally. And I think that's consumers becoming much more engaged in sustainability. We undertake consumer testing every 2 years. And what we see is year-over-year increases in concern about seafood sustainability, about the health of our oceans, and consumers wanting to see assured, traceable product and more sustainability information from producers on products.
2 minutes? Thank you. Okay, my next question is to Mr. McPherson. Are you finding any inequities or heavy-handedness or things that just don't make sense to harvesters in the quest to achieve MSC labeling?
Thank you, Mr. Small. Actually, Prince Edward Island was one of the first groups in North America to have harvesters on the actual certificate. We're in partnership with our seafood processors, the PIFA, and 3 of our First Nations on the island. So we've been an active part of that to make sure that if something's being discussed, even at a conceptual level, that it makes sense on the boat. And we will continue to do that. We will continue to be actively involved. And I think because we were involved we currently have processes that are functional for all parts of the supply chain. Thank you.
In terms of the effect of the right whale on labeling of seafood, how are you finding the struggle to keep up with labeling because of what's happening with the right whale? Would you like to explain that to the committee? And are you concerned that you can actually keep up? And do you think that efforts can actually be made to save the right whale by fishermen, or you think that you might be unfairly targeted a little bit there?
Sorry, was that directed to me?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Small, yeah, okay.
Sorry.
Thank you. Well, I guess I can't really speak to the labeling aspects, but I can speak to the measures that we put in Canada. And unfortunately, there's sometimes all the good things that we're doing aren't being effectively communicated, especially in some of the U.S. markets. So that's an ongoing battle. It's something that we work closely with. There's members of the Lobster Council of Canada, and we have a communications committee to address that. We put together, which I think is a very impactful pamphlet to advise buyers and people that have concerns around the right whales, that we're doing everything we can, and in many cases, leading the way in some of these measures. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Small. We'll now go to Mr. Hardy for 5 minutes or less, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to all of the witnesses appearing today. Just a little news item here. Icewater Seafoods in Newfoundland has just canceled imports of Russian cod in support of Ukraine, which is kind of nice, but it leads to a couple of questions about the processing part of the whole transaction. If Canadian catch is processed offshore and then returned to Canada, do we lose all traceability? I would maybe ask Ms. Caligari.
Thank you for the question. In many cases, I think that we do. Seafood is unique in that we do have transshipment, so multiple products coming from different boats maybe get put on one boat for processing and then sent to another place. And so that's certainly a challenge that that the seafood industry faces, in particular in terms of maintaining that traceability once it gets to the port.
Now, do we have situations where foreign catch, caught by a Portuguese vessel, could be landed in Canada for processing? Let's see, Mr. McPherson, maybe you could answer that.
Sorry, Mr. Hardy, could you repeat the question? I just missed part of it.
Yeah, no worries. Is it possible for a foreign vessel to land its catch in Canada for processing?
I do not know that, sir.
The matter came up of mixing product. So, if somebody's processing, let's say, cod, and you've got locally caught cod mixed with foreign caught cod, then all of a sudden it's terribly obscure to the rest of the chain. The transaction as to where exactly this is coming from. Now, we heard from the Canadian Food Inspection Agency, and they made it very clear that their focus is on the safety of the food. But we're hearing a lot of other issues that go beyond safety. It goes to fraud, it goes to sustainability, et cetera, et cetera. So, who, in addition to the CFIA, from the federal government side, needs to be involved in the whole issue of traceability? Maybe Mr. Hain will give this one to you. And if anybody else has a thought, just raise your hand, please.
Sure. Thanks for the question. I think DFO will be an important stakeholder here because, as we've heard from previous testimony, they're responsible for fisheries management and the time that fish gets to the dock. I think for any effective
coming into the country, sir. I'm talking about foreign products.
I'm sorry. So I think it will take participation of those importers in industry. And I think this is not unique to just imports, but also domestic seafood. And an important consideration you raised is that there's a possibility that domestically caught seafood is exported only for re-import after processing. So domestic seafood could be processed overseas. So I think it's important that you have some of those importers and exporters involved in those conversations, various sizes. So industry, all major players should be involved and consulted in this because there are some significant
no, I understand that, Mr. Hain, but I'm talking about government oversight here. The voluntary stuff, yeah, okay, works to a certain degree, but we know that can be gamed. Who, in addition to the CFIA on the federal side, should be involved in monitoring where the fish is coming from, when it's coming into Canada? Anybody else have a thought on that?
I'll leave it to others. What I would say is the verification systems are incredibly important because traceability systems is, if bad information or incorrect information is entered into a traceability system, you can have bad information at the end. Those verification systems are incredibly important, but I'll leave it to one of the other witnesses.
Mr. Hardy, I was just going to mention that it's very important that DFO is involved, I think, because that's primarily who the harvesting sector deals with. I just wanted to quickly loop back to...
yeah, you're missing my point. I'm talking about imports to Canada. I'm talking about imports to Canada, not fish that's caught domestically. And it just doesn't... I'm getting blank stares here, so there's obviously a gap.
Sorry, I was just going to add that I think the Canadian Border Services Agency would be an important federal government department that would be involved in this as well.
Thank you, Mr. Hardy. That was your last question for today. I know we're getting pretty close on time. We've probably got about 2 minutes left in the time allotted. I don't know if Mr. Garand has a question he'd like to get in.
Oui, avec grand plaisir.
Yes, of course. I would love to ask a question. Ms. Caligari, in your presentation, you mentioned creating a group in the federal government, a group of experts that would follow the matter of traceability and labeling. What do you think of perhaps having a commissioner to traceability and labeling? And this person could be responsible for all of the traceability activities of the Government of Canada, and what would their mandate be?
Thank you for the question. To keep it short, because I know we don't have too much time, yes, I think that could be an option to explore. I definitely think that having a specific committee or group of individuals or a commissioner, as you mentioned, will be important to move this forward and to make sure that it happens in a timely manner as well.
Ms. Byron, do you want to get in a quick question before I hit the the hammer?
Oh, always. I will try my best to make it quick. So the question is specifically for either Ms. Aylward or Mr. McPherson, and it's specifically around, I appreciate how helpful it is to have active members of our fishing community here in these studies. And I was wondering if you can speak a little bit more around ensuring commercial fishers are involved in these conversations and the priorities that you'd like to see to solve some of these challenges. So clearly that's a very quick question, but maybe a point or two would be helpful.
It's vital. And just to loop back to Mr. Small's comment there, a question about right whales and the measures that harvesters need to be heard on this. There's options out there. Some of them are incredibly expensive. So we need to do what works and what makes sense. And that is just one specific example on how the voices of harvesters need to be heard.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for your cooperation today. That concludes, I think, our questioning, and a big thank you to our witnesses for taking the time to appear before committee today, albeit by Zoom. But on a note from Mr. Hardy on Ice Water Resources, I want to congratulate Mr. Alberto Wierm for taking that initiative to not import any more Russian cod in recognition of what's going on in Ukraine. That particular fish plant operates almost year-round and processes cod. That's the only product that it does, and it supplies product all over the world. So good on him to have that initiative, and he should be congratulated. Everywhere. Thank you, everyone. Meeting adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank